Very good morning and once again warm welcome to all. Friends, first of all, I would like to congratulate the Department of Archaeology and especially Dr. Preeta Nair for making it possible to organize international webinars successfully. This is a third, I think. In earlier episode also I was there. This is a second one which I am participating. When I received an email from her asking to make a presentation on the demonology in South and Southeast Asian sculptural art. In fact, at a moment, it was a little surprise to me, though being a student of art history, looking at various aspects of the sculpture and sculptural narratives, development, and other connected issues like iconography, iconology, etc. In fact, I was not very serious about looking at the how demons have been involved or part of the visual art or sculptural narrations. Though since my student days, I have been looking at various narratives and also studying them and publishing them, writing my critical note on them, and did refer to them, but not as a serious researcher, especially looking only at the demons. Going back to the student days, looking at my notes and looking at my visual documentation that I have, it is quite surprising that the mode of representation and also the nature of execution, how a linear development has been happened in the Karnataka, especially the southern peninsular India. So as we know, like the demons or Rakshasas have been well mentioned since the Vedic era. They have been, envisaged as the one who destroyed the yajnas and yagas of the divinities. They are also one who troubled the devatas, including Brahma and many others. Especially Indra was a highly bothered person by the Rakshasas, because at the time he's bothered whether he would save his chair or not. And we have a good list of the demons whom we can identify as the most ferocious and also most troublesome Rakshasas too. But at the same time, if we look at the development of the Rakshasas, they are none other than the kids. As we know, so all the children of Diti went on to become Rakshasas. It means they are the half brothers of the Devatas. So the list of Rakshasas, when we look at, they are part of the Hindu lores, including if we even look at the Panchayatana, all Panchayatana Devatas were part of combat with the various Rakshasas, and also they vanquished them, like Shiva, Vishnu, even Surya, the Durga Bhagavati, Ganesha, and so on, and especially Skanda. So all these the divinities, in one way or the other way, were part of the combat with the Rakshasas. And starting with the Samudra Mathana theme, like subject. So it was again a kind of a compromise between the Rakshasas and Devatas, as they realized they cannot churn the ocean, the Devatas alone or Rakshasas alone. So ultimately, it was Vishnu who made it possible, assuming the form of turtle and also putting Mandara as well as Vasuki. The result, we know that the nectar came out, Lakshmi came out, Kamadhenu came out, and Airavata came out. Ultimately, Vishnu in the form of Mohini could serve the nectar and also see that no Rakshasa would get a drop of nectar. Finally, as we know, that the Rahu was one who could have consumed a few drops, and his body was beheaded by Vishnu again to save the nectar for the divinities. So such lores and mythological stories, they're plenty in number, and Indian artists imaginatively represented all such sculptures in sculptural form as well as the paintings. So the earliest visual narratives, if we look at in the Indian context, probably Buddhist art, Buddhist period, I think is one of the earliest period where the Rakshasas have been employed and visual representation of the Rakshasas have been given. Especially the Jataka stories have a lot of information and also the characteristic features of the Rakshasas. And the very popular story with the life of Buddha as a Mara Vijaya panel, where Mara, along with his army, attacks Buddha and try to trouble Buddha, as we have seen in the sculptural narrations, seen in the Bharut as well as the Sanchi, Amravati. But my example in connection with the early Chalukya period starts with the Sannati Stupa example. But we also have various modes of the representation of the Rakshasas. The finest example, of course, in the form of cloud, in the Bhaja cave temple, where Surya traveling in his Ratha, where the clouds have been converted in the form of the Rakshasas. So these are the some, the subjects or the areas where we can look at and also try to build up how the typology of Rakshasas was adopted by the Chalukyan artist, Sannati as a precursor, whether the same visual language has been used or not. And what was the type of typology that the Chalukyan artist adopted in the representation of the demon as part of the narratives. Hardly we come across any individual demonic figures in the Chalukyan art, but they were part of the Ramayana narratives, Mahabharata narratives, and also in the form of the representation of the Shiva Leela or the various activities connected with Shiva and the stories connected with Vishnu's incarnation, like especially Varaha and Narasimha and Vamana Trivikrama, where the mode of representation also is a very interesting. So I am trying to put in all the material together here in a briefest manner. I'll continue with the representation of the sculptural examples from Karnataka and try to communicate with the various aspects, and also trying to look at how the images were developed, especially formalistically. I'm trying to look at along with the textual references wherever it is possible, and also try to analyze the sculptural form. So the one which is there on your screen is a Mara Vijaya panel from Sannati, Kanaganahalli, Maha Chaitya, dating back to 1st century CE. See, usually the picture we have in our mind when we speak about the Rakshasas, when we try to visualize the Rakshasas as a grotesque figures, bulged eyes, fierce looking, and also they have the ability to create an illusion or a maya, and they can also assume form from insect size to the mighty form. So all these abilities, all these characters, all these qualities have been well recorded in scriptures, especially Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavata have a wonderful descriptions about the type of Rakshasas and also their activities. But the Buddhist lore has altogether different set of, the understanding and also representation. So Buddha in a symbolic form, where we have the empty throne with the cushion, footprint, and also Bodhi Raksha, the symmetrically organized composition, one can notice that how ferocious they look, their bulged eyes. Even in they in fact look sometimes a funny character, but if you carefully look at them, their grotesque form and fat, stout, and also looking very, trouble-making character-like figures. So these are the, the physical qualities, the facial details we get to see in early Buddhist art, and similar forms are also seen even in Sanchi. So one can have a detailed look of the way the faces have been carved. See, when we look at the Chalukya, they are totally different, and the visual language changes probably due to the time span and also understanding about the characters. And another example where the dwarf figures look like the demons have been represented in Sanati again. And yeah, see, the earliest examples of the zoomorphic, the form of Rakshasa can be, we can notice in the context of in general Indian art from Kushana period onwards, where Mahishmardini has been represented in a clay tablets as well as the stone examples. The Chalukyas adopted the prevalent iconographical traits and try to represent the same in a very, subtle manner, where the Mahisha, though not the later Pallava or Chola or even later Chalukya images where the human forms have been adopted, or zoanthropomorphic forms have been adopted, whereas the early examples of the Chalukya represent the zoomorphic form in the case of the Durga Mahisha Mardini. Even the mode of the representation of the animal, it's not simple ordinary animal, and the animal which combated with the Devi who had almighty powers, received from our entire the community of the divinities. So here, the victorious form of Devi overpowering on the demon has been very meaningfully represented. The same can also be seen in the form of Varaha Avtara. It's again a very interesting. There is a presence of demon without the visual representation. The Hiranyaksha's presence is not to be seen. But whereas later on the Hoysala kings, during the Hoysala period, the entire iconological details can be seen. The combat of Varaha with Hiranyaksha, as we know, the combat took place in the ocean. So the representation presence without the presence of the image. So that is the beauty of the early Chalukyan. And again, we also have similar examples starting from Gupta and followed even in the later on Rashtrakuta period also. So the Varaha, and I also try to bring in two more examples from the Hoysala, though the subject is a kind of all of a sudden I thought how the image has changed and culminated in combating scenes at a later period. So the one which is on your left, the larger picture, exactly like Hiranyakashipu episode of Narasimha, the artist has imagined the Varaha as if killing the Hiranyaksha. And also there is another picture of Hiranyaksha and Varaha combat. I mean, these are the later images, how the changing images and also mode of representation in the span of say from 550 to 1200, in the span of nearly 600 years, the images also change, the idea of representation also change. So the Vamana Vikrama is a very popular subject. Of course, Kerala, the Mahabali, as the grandson of Prahalada, the Bali Chakravarti, also known as Rakshasa Srestha. He is one among the immortals. The Bali was one among the 8 immortals, Chiranjeevi. So in spite of his, all good deeds, but the Devatas always had a, the worry about Bali. So the Bali, representation of Bali is not like the demonic figure what we see in the Buddhist connotation. Here he looks a normal human being. He is not at all shown with a bulged eyes or the extra cane like a dentils or overpowering the physiognomy. But whereas Bali's representation is a very sober, look like a standard human figure. So this is, the Bali's, the positive qualities have been incorporated as, as he is giving alms to Vamana, the figure what you see there. So the Namuchi and all the demons whom we consider as anti-devatas. So they are all represented unlike the demons as we understand in the scriptures. So the Samudra Mathana episode, again from the cave number 2 in Badami, where the mode of representation of the Rakshasa. See here, it looks like a projected snout. You can identify it like a wild boar or even any other animal. But whereas Devatas with a forearm and a normal human physiognomy. So the artist, I think this is the period where they were trying and experimenting to bring in the characteristic features of the demons. So another best example here, you can see the figure of Bali, very neatly finished. Like one can confuse with any Chalukyan king, probably Mangalesha himself. Mangalesha himself as portrayed as a Bali. So this argument can be put forth. Whereas his Kulguru, Rakshasa Guru Shukra, is also represented like a normal Brahmin, a Brahmin who is performing the obeisance. So this is what I'm trying to understand, trying to put forth, that the mode of representation as we read in the scriptures is totally different in the context of the visual narration. So when it comes to Bhagavata story in the Chalukyan cave temples, the cave number 3, cave number 2 have series of the Bhagavata stories represented on the inner lintel portion of the cave temple. So except Putana, all other demons who have been mentioned in Bhagavat Katha have been represented in their original form, like a Keshi Vada and Shakatasura Vada. Shakata has been represented in the form of the cart. But interestingly, later on, Rakshasa is coming out of the cart, the transpersonalizing the cart into the Rakshasa in a human form or a demonic form. So such visual narrations are plenty in representation in the Chalukya period. So the continuation of the stories like a Kali Damana episode is there, Dhenukasura Vada episode is also there. So within 1 feet space, the artists were trying to represent all these details in a very synoptic and compact manner. So the Ugra Narasimha, probably cave number 3 is the first cave temple, the temple where to have the episode of Ugra Narasimha in the entire peninsular India. As we know, 578 is the date of cave number 3. The form of Narasimha combating, rather than his tear opening the entrails of Hiranyakashipu, the figure of Hiranyakashipu is also very interestingly represented. One can also notice the other demons, other retinue of Hiranyakashipu are being attacked by different arms of Narasimha. So this is the first ever Ugra form of the Narasimha, though cave number 3 has a Kevala Narasimha sculpture, a benign form of the Narasimha sculpture. A malign form of the image appears right above the Ananta Vishnu, the seated Vishnu sculpture on the lintel portion. So the same continued. Again, the narratives connected with the Samudra Mathana, the same theme has also been repeated in cave number 3 and also from cave number 2 to 3 also. So now, there is another beautiful example on the upper Shivalaya, Badami. The same as I shown you in cave number 3 example. Now it has been enlarged into a matured sculpture. Unfortunately, the stone has been deteriorated, corroded because of the sandstone and also wind velocity. We cannot get the details of the face of the Hiranyakashipu. But otherwise, the figures whom we can see all around, they have gradually started, the artists have gradually started changing the characters of the faces of the demons. So upper Shivalaya only, I would also like to show you the Bhagavata narrative and also Ramayana narrative. Now you can see representation of the Shurpanakha. The Parnakuti is represented where Rama, Sita, Lakshmana are represented, and Shurpanakha with her bulged eyes. For the first time, such character is being introduced. Even for Putana also, it is almost similar character. So like an ogress, Putana has been represented here with burned hair, probably, and also bulged eyes, and kind of a ferocious face, where she is angry and also being killed by young Krishna. So Ravanasura, and you can notice here very clearly, Shurpanakha is coming and complaining. The entire narration takes us to Ravana's court. So sitting in Maharaja Leelasana with multiple heads, Ravana's 10-head concept was already crystallized in the form of visual narration here. So Kumbhakarna, we can see, though their facial details are very much similar to the normal human beings. And again, Bhagavata narration, as I have mentioned, the cave number 3, 2 examples repeat in the upper Shivalaya, where the Keshi Vada and also other episodes represented there. Yeah, Putana Vada, Shakatasura Vada. The most fascinating images are found in Mahakuta temple, Mahakuteshwara temple, where the entire Ravanasura episode, Ravana bestowed with the 10 heads, and also Ravana lifting Kailash, and Ravana cutting his heads and submitting to Shiva have been narrated there. These are some of the finest examples, I would say. Probably later on, even Pattadakal as well as Rashtrakuta, Pattadakal, Virupaksha and Rashtrakuta monument at Kailasha also, they have adopted the same typology to represent the theme. So you can see here, whereas Ravana, you can also look at the details of Ravana's face. Unlike normal face, sitting comfortably, cutting his head and submitting to Shiva one after the other. And look at Parvati as a mother. So consciously looking at Ravana and also probably telling Shiva, and look at, she also holds the hand of Shiva where she should not slip from his lap. Shiva sitting very calmly without bothering what is happening to Ravana. So this also brings in a kind of a narrative that tells us the story of Ravana, the story prior to the Atmalingu Prahasana, Atmalingu story. So this is the, here you can look at Hatha Yoga, where the fires are lit all around, and Ravana lifting Kailash. So there is a kinetic energy in the composition of the figures. So Parvati is so bothered when Ravana lifts the Kailash, and Shiva tells her, cool down, as if he pressed down the hill, the mountain through his toe, where Ravana, look at Ravana's face, is unable to lift it once again. So when Rakshasas are represented, even their facial expressions were also captivated by the artists. So another fine example of the combat of Devi with zoanthropomorphic Mahishasura from Mallikarjuna temple, Pattadakal, it is a typical Pallava variant that has been adopted by the Chalukyans. As we know, after 734 war, when the temple was being built, many artists possibly traveled from Kanchipuram region to Pattadakal. And the many such examples we can see, there is a lot of interpolation, stylistic interaction between the Pallava Chalukya regions in those days. Of course, same typology even continues later on in Ellora also. You can notice the way the other Rakshasas who have already been killed. Now the mode of representation of the Rakshasas changes gradually from Badami to Aivale, Badami to other examples in Badami itself, and then to Mahakuta to the Mallikarjuna temple, or even Virupaksha, Papanatha in Badami Chalukya region. So try to bring in some of the representations, the Vamana Trivikrama Avatara, where the artist trying to adjust the figures within the composition, that is one aspect. But on the second thing is, there is no much change. But when it comes to Shiva sculpture, whether it is Apasmara Purusha or other the dwarf figures or Gana figures, they have very interesting facial representation. You can look at the lion has been represented in the form of his belly, and also the figure Apasmara supposed to be holding the serpent, and he's been adjusted in like a grotesque figure. So the mouth especially, where the deep holes have been carved on all the other both the sides to provide a facial expression, make the facial expression more vibrant. And also all the figures, irrespective of demon or the divinities. So yeah, another fine example of Ravana lifting Kailash from Patadakal. You can also notice the demons over there, the Ganas over there, and also Ravana. Ravana is comfortably enjoying the lift of the Mount Kailash. Unlike what we have seen earlier in Mahakota, you can see his face. It's almost like that of the Shiva next to him, where Shiva dances with Nandi Dvaja and Apasmara Purusha, and mode of representation again changes, and also the details of the facial expression. So the combating scenes quite commonly found in Badami Chalukya. Probably first time they began to introduce such combating scenes of Hiranyakashipu as well as the Narasimha, Jatayu Vadha. And look at here, the representation of the Shurpanakha. Shurpanakha as a mighty ogress. As I mentioned you, the demons have ability to assume form like an insect to that of the mighty form. So whereas she is trying to overpower the mighty power of Lakshmana here once again. So representation, the mode of representation changes. Yeah, the Shiva in Shiva sculpture, of course, the figures are very, very interesting. In Andhakasura Vadha, once again Durga Bhagavati, where she is trying to look at the Titan demon, the way it is being represented. So the entire story is both the story, they are not static. They are very, very active, and also try to build up the narrative within them. And represent, yeah, I try to look at the form once again, Apasmara Purusha as part of the Nataraja, and also Ravana once again. Yeah, Virupaksha temple has a beautiful narrations on the pillars of the Sabha Mantapa or Navaranga. So the story connected with Ramayana, where Hanuman jumps the Setu Samudram, say the ocean, to reach Sri Lanka. So as we read the Valmiki Ramayana, he encounters with Rakshasas in between. So once again, if you can look carefully at the image in the center, it directly connects that Hanuman in his original form, like a monkey form. there is a jump, and also he escapes from her and also reaches the other end. So in the center, the artist is trying to bring in the Rakshasi. Yeah, we have similar examples of representation of the Rakshasa Gana in the Sri Lankan city, Sri Lanka, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, where Ravana, though some of them are unfinished, but we can very well gaze them, their the physical and the anatomical structures. Yeah, some of the finest examples again I would like to record here. Tripura Samhara. Usually the Tripurasuras formally represented only in the later part. Otherwise, Tripurasuras represented in the form of the three cities or three you can say a typical Dravidian architecture in the case of the southern India. And later on, they are also represented in the form of circles. So once again, I would like to, in a modern art historical theory, we speak about the presence without the presence. So there is a symbolic representation, symbolism and iconography. They are represented here as a metaphors. So once again, the Rakshasa in the form of the metaphor, we can see as a Tripura Samhara or Tripurantaka episode like the Tarakasura's sons, Tarakaksha, Vidunmali, and Vindhyaksha, who were killed by the Tripurasura. I wrote a paper few years back, like how Mahabharata Shalya Parva has a wonderful, beautiful narration of comparison of the Tripura, the Shiva with Karna, and again Shalya with Brahma. So exactly the Chalukyan artists try to bring in the same character, the way Shiva, enumerated himself as a warrior god and finally defeats and kills Tripurasuras. See again the mode of representation of Rakshasa in the another example of Shiva from Patadakal. So now I jump into the Papanatha temple. Papanatha temple at Patadakal was possibly completed by 750 CE, and the narratives of the Ramayana directly carved on the wall. So they are also inscribed, whether they are Vali, Sugriva, Ravana, Rama, Jatayu, like that they are being inscribed with the Kannada letters. And also the mode of representation, probably we can say this is the crystallized form of the representation of demons in the Chalukyan art. So the character has been systematically defined by their facial details. Like look at Ravana. So this Ravana is absolutely different. Probably one can say a metamorphosis of the development as we seen from the earlier example to this example. So the bulged eyes and also wide open mouth, and also look more, ferocious than funny character as we have seen in Mara Vijaya or other examples. Yeah, the whole Papanatha temple beautifully represented Ramayana episode. Rama, Lakshmana in one hand, Hanuman on the other hand, and Ravana and his demon army has been represented almost with identical features. Yeah. Again, look at the Ravana and Shurpanakha. So unlike the subject what we have seen in Upper Shivalaya Badami, here it is more defined with the characteristic features as Ravana has been explained. Devi, once again the transformation of the buffalo into human form, zoanthropomorphic or human form. So once again Devi as a the youth and angry lady, so trying to fight, and same typology has been adopted. Again, Ravana lifting Kailash from Papanatha temple. Yeah. Andhakasura Vada from Galaganatha temple, Patadakal. Yeah, this is one of the fine examples of Tarakasura Vada from Huchmali temple, Aihole, where Skanda fighting, sitting on his mount and trying to fight Tarakasura. See, this is the Tarakasura. But when we look at, this is slightly earlier to Papanatha temple, the mode of representation as if Tarakasura is enjoying the fight. So this is what is a kind of a relation he tried to build. And what is interesting is the mode of combat, as if the moment Skanda looks at Tarakasura, he is trying to jump from his mount and with his spear, he is about to hit probably on his chest. And that is the moment that artist creates and brings in the narrative in a more meaningful manner. So the later temple, which is almost at the fag end of the Badami Chalukya period, Kashi Vishweshwara temple, also considered a temple which was built in a transition period of the Badami Chalukya and Rashtrakuta. So the narratives which I am showing now are from Kashi Vishweshwara, and also they are being adjusted within the pillar space, the square space of the pillar. Tripura Samhara. Look at Ravana lifting Kailash. Ravana has been almost crushed to the corner where Shiva and Parvati figures have been occupying the other entire space. And Gajasamhara Murti. Gajasamhara Murti is not just Gajasamhara. Here he also has his Nandi. So the whole narration is represented. Look at the elephant. And now he has killed and tears open the the entrails and also the entire body of the Gajasura. And look, Parvati. Parvati anxiously looking at the the carcass of the elephant. And so these are the some interesting things which we can understand them not only from the point of iconography, also from the point of iconology and mode of representation. Yeah, the Bhagavata narrations, Shakatasura Vadha, and then we can starting from here. So the Dhenukasura Vadha, Putana Vadha, all examples very categorically represented. I would like to conclude with some of the later examples, how the visual language changes from Chalukya to the later Chalukya to that of the Hoysala. So the Vamana Trivikrama narrative, which I noticed for the first time in 2003 at Lakkundi, though the temple was known to the world almost 150 years ago, and many people have written, but unfortunately, no scholars were identified or discovered it. By chance, I could see it. It is in the lintel of the Antarala of Kasi Vishweshwara temple. Difficulty in photography, of course, can be seen there. And the whole narration takes us to the striding of the the entire universe. But the mode of representation, once again, going back to the roots, Bali as a pious king. Bali as a pious king. And the Hoysalas also used the same typology. Same visual language has been continued in the Hoysala period. This is the window of Keshava temple, Channakeshava temple, Beluru. But very interesting thing is how the visual language changes from one period to other period. The temple dated to 1173 at Kuruvangala, named Bucheshwara. The temple is that was built to commemorate the coronation of Ballala II, Veera Ballala, the grandson of Vishnuvardhana. See, look at the mode of representation. Hiranyakashipu hitting on the pillar and Narasimha appearing from the pillar. The character of the Hiranyakashipu also changes. So again, going back to the Papanatha typology, here the same typology has been adopted. Yeah, the combating scenes, once again, very common. Like Narasimha, this is from Somnathpur Keshava temple, Hiranyakashipu. Yeah, the Bhutaganas with from Mahakuta, where probably these were the early Rashtrakuta examples. How the Rakshasa, Rakshasa as a Gana, even in the demigods, have been well defined and well represented. So thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much all to patiently listening to me. Yeah, thank you.